Hi there, Brady Barrows with the RRDi. I'm the founder and currently the treasurer, and I'm going to make a video about volunteering, which is at the heart of how the RRDi was formed. Back between 1998 and 2005, there were volunteers that got together and we formed the RRDi. There were a number of us, and I have a whole video on that. It's called About the RRDi that explains the history if you're interested. And so I thought I'd make a video about volunteering because most millennials and those younger who have rosacea, they prefer devices and they like to look at videos. And so we're making a series of videos in hopes that we can stir up that volunteer spirit that we had back, 17 years ago. And hopefully you'll see why volunteering is beneficial. And not only for those who have rosacea, but for the volunteer. Now, the RRDi is a 501(c) nonprofit. And I'm going to make another video about nonprofits because people have a weird idea about what a nonprofit is. But many nonprofit organizations, not all of them, but many, a significant number, rely on volunteers. And the RRD is totally volunteer. And so to help you to understand about volunteering, we're going to look at some statistics, okay? In an article that was published on the website The Conversation, it says, quote, about 25% of Americans volunteered in 2015, according to federal data, compared to a global average of just 10%. So in the world, 10% volunteer. But in America, in 2015, 25%. Now, that same article pointed out, though, from, quote, the volunteering rate has declined slightly from 27% in 2002, despite the efforts of many American leaders. So it dropped to 25%. Okay, now that was 2015. What do you think the rates are in 2020? All the data is showing that in 2020, due to the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, nonprofits are hurting. You can come up with your reasons why nonprofits are hurting, but we sure felt it. We haven't gotten any volunteers. Besides that, no donations, and we are struggling. So I'm trying to help you to understand about volunteering. What is it that volunteering does? What are the benefits? Well, the benefits help others. So you just think about it. If you have rosacea and you volunteer to help other rosaceans, it helps them, but also there's a benefit to the volunteer. Now, how do we know that? Because there is scientific data to show that this is true. So, there was an article that was written by Andy Seth. He's an entrepreneur, and he has a blog. And he had an article called "The Way We Think About Volunteering is Dead Wrong." And it's an interesting article. And I have a whole post on this. And I'm just reading from my post and talking to you about this. You can find all these references that I'm referring to in the video on the post. And it's the article that I posted is volunteering benefits. Okay. Well, this Andy Seth mentioned that research shows that the happiest volunteers are those who give 2 hours per week. That's it, 2 hours, quote unquote, okay? Now, if we could get volunteers to do 2 hours. That would be a miracle. There's no way. People just don't do that. I think, Andy, they don't do it here on the RRDi. If we could get somebody to post, just post, volunteer to post, and spend 15 minutes doing this, that would be incredible. We can't even get our members. We have 1,300 members. They won't even post. They can't even volunteer to do that. Now, why is that? Well, I have another video that I made. It's Where Have All the Rosaceans Gone? And you can read that. I'm putting all these videos on our YouTube channel, and it's to social media. So they're willing to volunteer, quote unquote, volunteer on a social media website like Facebook or Reddit. No problem. They'll spend hours over there, but they won't do it over here at the RRDi. So that's why I'm making this video, to help you to understand. Think about volunteering for a non-profit organization for rosacea. Okay, what's the benefit? Well, the data shows that volunteers, this is what Mr. Andy Seth says, quote, volunteers live longer than people who didn't volunteer if, now notice this, they reported altruistic values or a desire for social connections as the main reasons for wanting to volunteer, according to the study, end quote. So, he goes on, there was a co-author, his name was, is a girl, Andrea Furel-Forbes. She, it's referred to in an American Psychological Association report. That's the one that Andy is referring to. I looked that up, and it said, she said, quote, it's reasonable for people to volunteer in part because of benefits to self. However, our research implies that should these benefits to the self become the main motive for volunteering, they may not see those benefits. So you got to look at it from those two angles. But what's referred to in all the articles about volunteering benefits is it's called the helper's high. And there's videos about this, right? And it's been scientifically confirmed, okay, that you get a helper's high. So, in an article in The Guardian about this subject, it said, quote, but while the benefits of volunteering are clear, there is worrying evidence that people who could benefit most from giving their time are precisely those least likely to be involved. So what's the current state of volunteering? Volunteering rates have been steadily declining for over a decade. And this is according to this website called Volunteer Match, which the RRDi is connected to. Okay? And in this article, this article says, quote, there's an endless supply of reasons that could explain why volunteer rates are falling. Last year, upon seeing the results, Volunteer Match President Greg Baldwin argued that volunteer rates are falling because we as a nation don't invest enough resources in the nonprofit sector. Okay. That's true for the RRDi. There's no money. Without resources, nonprofits simply don't have the capacity to effectively engage volunteers. Now, if someone in the comments of that post argued, quote, the falling rates can be attributed to the fact that more people are overworked with less time on their hands. Others say people are simply lazier than they used to be. But I personally think it could be attributed to a shifting trend away from community involvement due to the emergence of online communities, young people moving more often, and other factors. And, we could just go on and on about what the reasons are people don't volunteer. So the article that I'm referring to is on a website called Volunteer Match. And the article was, quote, "The U.S. volunteer rate is still dropping. Why?" by Tess Srebro, posted on March 25th, 2016 in an article that was called Industry Research, Engaging Volunteers. So that is where I'm getting this information, and it's posted on our website. I'm going to give you the link where it is if you want to read it and refer to all these references. But what's interesting is that on the website there were comments, of course, and one of the comments was interesting. It was a guy named Ron from Florida. He posted on April 16th, 2016, this insightful comment. He said, "When I was younger, volunteering and giving back was part of life. It was something that we did and didn't think twice about it. I don't see that same philosophy these days. It's to the point that schools here require some level of community service to complete your graduation requirements." See, and so when you volunteer because you're forced to, it's like, is that volunteering? No, you should volunteer because you see the benefit and you want to help. And that's what an altruistic value really is. It's like if you're going to jail and the judge says, "Well, you got to do community service." Is that volunteering? No. So think about volunteering for the benefit of others, and also secondary, you get benefits, you get the helper's high, and you can watch a video about all that. It's really true. They've proven that volunteering is really beneficial. And in order to volunteer for the RRDi, you have to be motivated that you believe that what the RRDi is doing is worth it. I've made a video about the RRDi, the history and why we formed it. You should watch that video. That's under our About section, about the RRDi, on our website. And then I made an interesting video about grassroots, what that means. It's built from the bottom up. We're not a top-down organization. You need to understand that concept. And then also, there's one other nonprofit called the Erythro-Malaysia Association that I made a video about. It's worth watching that video because that organization is what we're like. But we need members who want to volunteer. And if we don't get volunteers, I don't see how we're going to keep going. We need members to volunteer, at least post. At least, can you donate $1? That's an incredible volunteer thing to do. And I'll be making more videos to try to keep the RRDi going. But if we don't get volunteers, I mean, that's at the heart of it. If we don't get them, this whole thing, the RRDi is going to go down in 2021, looks like. So anyway, thanks for watching and listening to this video. Really appreciate your time.